and crucially, this sort of end, what you might call this end moral coda, was at work. I suppose we were constantly, for instance, Sidney Lumet, who directed the great '74 film, and who I got a chance to meet and spend some time with later in his career, said to me about this subject that he wanted to make a romp, R-O-M-P, a sort of, something that, and the music of that film is very, everything's sort of, it's got a little kind of flourish, a sort of flourish. Whereas for me, this movie was more of a brood. So I wanted to set up a first movement that was about the joy of travel. I want, big landscape in Jerusalem, and then the thrill, which I feel when you're getting on a train that's going on an exotic trip. But then I wanted to take layers away and make it dirtier and darker and more brooding, so that everything was about trying to keep a lid on the kind of passion that Michelle Pfeiffer's character reveals when we see what happens at the end. And also in my mind constantly was the mob, the 12 of them. For me it's very disturbing to see somebody as sort of as elegant as Judi Dench, getting in there, so it's all just sort of ugly but from civilized people who are carrying this incredible hurt. When I was working on this, I was also directing a production of Hamlet in the theatre with Tom Hiddleston. And I found strong parallels in these two revenge dramas about what happens when people, and we use the line in the film, are reacting to the poison of deep grief. And I suppose that's what I felt was what underneath it all would keep our audience a little more thrown off balance. Start differently, change the characters, but keep the underneath also allowing us, as we discussed, to move different locations and stuff, and feel also, finally I suppose, in the performance of it, one of the things that I said to the actors, I would meet with each actor and talk about the character, but when we got on set, I wouldn't rehearse. We'd sit like this and we'd shoot immediately, because I always wanted to get everybody's first, sometimes even nervous, impressions. I didn't want anything settled. I wanted to feel that the dialogue had an improvised quality, and sometimes when it's a first take and you haven't rehearsed and you're shooting on film, inside you're a little like that, holding on to but it does something to your eyes, it does something to your body language that makes me feel more like that person knows that the answer to this question is literally a matter of life and death. We're stuck on a mountain in Yugoslavia in 1934. If I get blamed for this, I'm dead, I'm hung, rather than death as a parlour game and that kind of, inspector, and that kind of, sort of thing. So all of those things were about going, even if you know who, we will explain differently how, we'll explain differently why, and then critically, we will explain differently, what do we do now? What is justice? Is justice closure? Is justice revenge? Poirot finds it very difficult to conceive that the way to control human affairs is to say an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. With the loss of an innocent, the loss of a child, anything's possible. He finds that really difficult, and yet he understands the gargantuan pain involved. So all of that is more in the air in this version, and for me that constitutes something that speaks differently to a brilliant and beautiful romp.
Well, you just mentioned the terms of closure, deep grief, revenge, and Michelle Pfeiffer and the music, which is not a romp in that movie. You even composed a song for her, which is precisely about that.
Yeah.
Could you tell us about the song Never Forget?
Well, Pat Doyle and I have written lots of songs. Pat Doyle has composed the music for nearly all of my films. Sometimes we write a song in order to understand what we think it's about. We never even play it to anybody. Sometimes we don't, but a lot of times we do, because it's a way of articulating what we think it is. And here, the sort of the ache, the terrible ache that would mean, in a way, you know, there are no winners in this story. So when he leaves them, he says, I hope you may find your peace with this. I hope we all, whether they have a chance to heal, maybe, whether they can or not, I don't know. And the song was a sort of response to this, trying to somehow say that maybe there is some beautiful resignation or acceptance that just says, we've done everything we can, including this incredible, violent act of revenge, and the loss is still there, and you are still gone, and we still miss you, and it still hurts, but we won't forget. And that's one of the things I found when I was working on Hamlet recently was and having worked on that play a lot over the years, that there seems in the play just a simple sort of acknowledgement that human beings must, for their own sort of health, mark the passing of loved ones. We know very little when we come into this world, except that we will die, and that everyone else will, and possibly our first experience of death will be losing people we love. So if that happens naturally, it's one thing. If it happens because they have been violently removed, it's another thing. So the problem in Hamlet is that Hamlet's father dies and his mother marries almost immediately. And here you really feel in all of the characters that the acknowledgement of the death, the marking of the death, the ritual of closure is necessary. And somehow, by the time we got to the end of the movie, we thought, well, a song does it because the musical theme is from the inside of the film. It's how it accompanies the death, as it were, of Johnny Depp's character. And when we talked to Michelle about doing it, her first reaction was she wanted to make sure her voice was in good shape. And I said, well, it's not really so much about the musical perfection. It's about experiencing it. It's about it's being it rather than doing it. So it's not about showing off. She sings very beautifully, but it's more about living through that emotion. You still get to the end of the song, and it's sort of agonizing because it's just, you know, when my parents passed, I just remember, the very, very hard to just get past initially. This won't ever change. This won't ever change. I found that it's very hard, isn't it? It's very hard. It's difficult. So anyway, the song was a response to trying to put that into the film, because that's what we felt was underneath the story.
Question ici. Où est le micro? On ne voit pas bien. Oui.
Hello.
Hello.
I've got a few questions, and the first thing I want to say is just I'm a big fan of yours.
Thank you.
Of your work, and I really like your work on Shakespeare film and Frankenstein. I do wonder if the film is a success, if there's other movies with Hercule Poirot. Je vais peut-être le dire en français en fait parce que sinon.
I think the film is a success. Basically, we see you and your moustaches again, right?
J'ai vu d'autres questions aussi. Si le tournage de Dunkerque a eu un impact sur la préparation du film, et si M. Branagh a une théorie concernant le fait que les personnages américains, que dans les films américains, les personnages franchis utilisent beaucoup de mots en français quand ils parlent anglais.
All right. So first part of the question, the moustaches, will they be back again? And acting in Dunkirk with Christopher Nolan directing, did it sort of feed into the way you directed Murder on the Orient Express?
Well, for the first part of the question, I don't know if France has the television program Big Brother, but in England we have this reality show, and at the end when they decide, when they talk about who's going to be thrown out of the house, a big solemn voice always says, "You decide." So when it comes to are there going to be more Poirots, you decide, because it'll be a simple business of whether enough people go to the movies to see it. I'd love to do some more. Yeah, I loved playing him, and for some of the reasons we've just been talking about. For potentially a kind of broad appeal movie, if that's what it is, and I'd love lots of people to see it. I feel it touches on so many things that are so interesting inside something that can be very, very entertaining. So I hope so. And then, as far as Dunkirk goes, it was really a pleasure and a privilege to be directed by Christopher Nolan. He was very, very helpful to me as an actor, and very supportive, and it was a very real kind of relationship. Watching him be calm in the middle of the crazy logistics of thousands of your countrymen dressed as English soldiers live on the beach at Dunkirk with real boats and real planes and 65mm film cameras, which are very heavy, all being used in handheld mode. So Hoyte van Hoyte, who was the DP, was like a kind of bodybuilder using this stuff. I really admired seeing him retain a personal focus that I tried to follow myself. When directing things on this scale, it's good to be able to be calm at the centre of the storm, so you can stay creative and not get sucked into the chaos, because it's all chaos. Christopher Nolan was a great example of that. A very personal film was being made in a spectacularly, sort of inevitably chaotic scenario, and that's how most films are actually. And his what you might call grace under pressure was what affected how I directed this movie.
Question.
Hi. First of all, I also have to say it. You just have no idea how much it means to me that to have this opportunity to finally meet you. As for my question, you just spoke about your work with Patrick Doyle about the song, but your musical collaboration is one, I think, of the greatest of the last 20 years on cinema. What could you tell us about this specific score and the way you both work together? Because once again, it's very different. The music is omnipresent. There's a lot of music, a lot of piano, some harp as well. How did you work together on the score, not the song?
Well, as soon as I know that I'm doing a picture, I talk to Patrick, and we usually sort of meet for lunch or whatever, and just talk instincts, intuition, you know. And sometimes that intuition leads us to a sort of